Hi all. In today's instructive game, I want to address the question of how many moves you look ahead. I would like to ask you, the YouTube audience, about this question. Do you routinely try and look quite far ahead in the position? What emphasis do you place on calculation as opposed to strategy? Does it for you depend on the type of position, how tactically oriented you'll be or how positionally oriented you'll be? So, to answer this question, I'm looking at the book How Life Imitates Chess by Kasparov for his clues and insights into this question, which apparently was asked of him, many times during his career. At the age of 22, he had become world champion, and this was one of the more common questions that, especially non-chess players would ask him. So, to first address this question, one part of the book, on page 54, Kasparov, he talks about calculation being focused and disciplined, and he says basically that you would think that if it was all about calculation, then today's computer technology would dominate the game. But he reckons the hypothesis is refuted because of basically in chess you have static and permanent features of the position. I think he's referring really to like pawn structure and things like that, the slow moving factors in the position, which computers still sometimes they get wrong the deeper plan. Kasparov quotes the Dutch psychologist Adriaan de Groot, and de Groot performed studies to show that elite players don't in fact look ahead much further, considerably, than weaker players while solving chess problems. In fact, on occasion, neither the ability to do so nor the doing can define their superior chess strength. In fact, the difference is considering the elements in the position first. This is what Kasparov recommends, that you consider the elements so you can establish a strategy. Then you develop your intermediate objectives. And then you keep all those factors in mind, and then only then you finally begin to calculate variations, so you know which results are favourable. So Kasparov is saying that experience and intuition can guide the process, but calculation is still required within that. So basically, Kasparov is basically saying that calculation is always in the context of having your strategic objective by looking strategically at the position. And I believe in that myself. From my own experience, in the Southend tournament, which I did really well in, I tried to play more strategically in the last Southend, and I converted my 3 losses from like 2 years before into 3 draws. So I became second equal, and I remember when I had the 3 losses like 2 years ago, I was doing a lot more intense calculation and sort of wearing myself out. But in the one I did better, I was trying to be more strategic, trying to get positional advantages. And that guidance, I think, it means you're less worn out at the board. If we go back a little bit earlier in Kasparov's book now, on page 49, basically, Kasparov says that in chess we see many cases of good strategy failing due to bad tactics and vice versa. So a simple oversight can undo the most brilliant concepts. And in the long run, bad strategy can succeed also due to good tactics or due to their sheer, luck. So basically, he also, he cites Pablo Picasso, who apparently said, computers are useless. They can only give you answers. Questions are what matter. Questions and discovering the right ones are the key to staying on course. Are our tactics our day-to-day decisions based on long-term goals? The wave of information threatens to obscure strategy, to drown it in details and numbers, calculation and analysis, reaction and tactics. To have strong tactics, we must have strong strategy on one side and accurate calculation on the other. Both require seeing into the future. Now, within what Picasso said there about, in particular, the word reaction and tactics, I had noticed at a different point in Kasparov's book, he does use this contrasting idea. If we flip back now, I'm flipping back to page 18 and 19, where basically he considers the difference between tactics and strategy as this. Tactics is more reactive, you're reacting to the current position. Strategy is more active, you're actively having a more long-term goal. So I thought that's a very interesting comparison, because something I've really struggled with myself is, was Kotov completely wrong with his controversial book called, Think Like a Grandmaster, where he put such an emphasis on calculation and candidate moves, etc. And where was the positional stuff? Later he did a book called Plan Like Grandmaster, where he addressed a lot of the positional stuff. But the two are integrated. The synergy is what Kasparov talks about on page 18. He says, chess, sport, art or science is the question. And no, the answer is sport, art and science. It's the synergy of all three which Kasparov emphasizes. So, he says basically non-chess players, they overemphasize the scientific aspect, memorization, precise calculation, the application of logic being essential. But actually, Kasparov, he's basically saying that the answer is synthesis. Page 19, we see this: the ability to combine creativity and calculation, art and science, into the whole that is much greater than the sum of its parts. He says chess is a unique cognitive nexus, a place where art and science come together in the human mind and are then refined and improved by experience. Anyway, as a final note, I'm going to give you a game fragment now of one of Kasparov's noted examples. So here he's playing against Topalov in the 1999 Weekend Z tournament. It's a video I've done before if you want to search on Kasparov and Topalov on YouTube. But from this position, Kasparov did launch a remarkable combination with rook takes d4 here. And, Rybka really can't see this combination at this point. It just thinks equal, after rook e7. Even at depth 21 ply, this is just seen as equal. But the king is drawing up the board here. And Kasparov, he says that actually 90% of the published analysis after he didn't actually see. He was basing this winning continuation on instincts, and that, if the king's drawn up the board, there's going to be resources available to him. So rook a7 here, and after rook b7, now rook takes b7. White has the threat of king b2 and queen b3, mating the black king, by the way. So in this position, Rybka actually gives a key defensive idea of rook h e8, with the idea that basically, queen d4 is going to be a defence, or queen e5 in some lines, against this king b2 idea. But there's a very interesting line even in this, which Rybka does acknowledge then is winning for White, which I'll quickly show you. It's this line, bishop f1. And, this is a kind of tactical variation which would give White a big advantage. So anyway, in the game, Black played queen c4, and Kasparov now played this continuation, where the king was sucked in, and after bishop f1 here, it's now clearly seen by Rybka as a big advantage to White. So clearly in this game example, Kasparov had really calculated very deeply, but a lot of it was intuition. He didn't precisely calculate it all, and his instinct was telling him that the resources would be there. So it was one of the most brilliant combinations, from Kasparov's games, I think, of all time. Addendum. There are two more things I would just quickly like to throw into this video, which is what Kasparov has talked about in terms of strategy. Basically, he said he's compared football to chess, and he said the strategies of the game are deep and complex. Whilst the obvious game of football is to score goals and preventing the opponent from doing the same, the actual way of achieving it is debatable, and that's the real complexity. So basically, he's comparing that to chess, and he's saying, anyone can learn the rules of the game and be competent at calculation and doing manoeuvring, but without goals, their play would be aimless. And there's the powerful expression which Kasparov cites, which is basically a bad plan is better than no plan at all. And Kasparov, reckons it's more clever than true. Every decision has to be made, and it's got to have a context in what plan that move was in. So Kasparov also, he gives these examples. He says basically the strategist starts with the goal in the distant future and works backward to the present. So a grandmaster, he makes the moves based on where he wants the board to look like in 10 to 20 moves in the future. But this doesn't require calculation of 20 move variations. He evaluates where his advantages are, establishes the objectives, and then works backwards. So basically he's not working like Kotov's triv analysis. He's working backwards, not forwards. If you'd like to leave comments on how many moves you think ahead, that would be interesting to discuss in YouTube. Thanks very much.